Chapter 88. Slowly rising within the hazy realms of the Orient, Marcus and I started our day with our typical lazy breakfast. Only this time, it was Shanghai style. But it wasn't to last. Our peaceful, lazy breakfast was soon interrupted by Lucas and Philippe, who were also staying in the hotel, as well as Ethan and Douglas, Marcus's lawyers. It was a huge day, and pressing matters regarding the contract had to be sorted out with a fine-tooth comb. I left them all to it and headed to our bedroom to get dressed until there was yet another knock at the door. "That'll be for you," Marcus called out. I glanced over my shoulder at him, perplexed. For me? I opened the door in my silk kimono and saw 4 Chinese women with racks and racks of clothing in zip bags. What the? I didn't understand any of it. There were also 2 men behind these polite-looking women, holding big steel cases, followed by 2 other men, who I'm guessing were security, that stayed at the door. Now this was hideous. "Hi," I stammered, unable to hide my confusion. "Ni hao." "Hello, Mrs. Almeida," the elegant Chinese woman said in perfect English. "Mrs. Almeida?" I like the ring to that. "I am Liva, your personal stylist for today," she smiled. "And this is my team of assistants." She pointed back at them as they bowed to me. Personal stylists? I glanced at Marcus slyly, deep in business talks. He was so slick. Please, I said, opening the door wide. "Come in." I shuffled everyone into the lounge area that indulged us with views across the Bund and called for the butler to organize everyone refreshments. The stylish group immediately unzipped all the bags and set up displays of everything imaginable. Beaded gowns, designer frocks, and stilettos galore, while the men with the briefcases busily opened them, revealing many array of endless diamonds, sapphires, rubies, and emeralds. I was floored. Marcus brought the shopping to me. God damn. How he did this, I have no idea. He never ceased to amaze me. I tried on dress after dress, which was so exhausting, but eventually I settled for a stunning, full-length velvet green Gucci dress. A low V-neck with a provocative split right up the side of the leg. The dress was slaying. And after recovering from diamond blindness, I selected a gorgeous pair of bespoke ruby earrings designed by Cindy Chow. A few hours later, Marcus walked in smiling and bowing at everyone. Lucas, Philippe, Ethan, and Douglas all followed behind him. "Did you find something?" he asked me. "Yes," I said, pointing to the Gucci. "That one." "Great," he said, grinning at me. "I need to leave now. We're going to sign the contract." I squeezed his hands within mine. "Good luck," I whispered quietly. He leaned over and kissed me in front of everyone, the lawyers and Lucas and Philippe. I wish I didn't appear so shocked. And come on, as if they didn't know what was already going on. We were sharing the suite together, for Christ's sakes. "Choose anything you like," Marcus said. "I'll be back in a couple of hours. Be ready, for we'll have to leave soon after." Thank you. I nodded at him, those blazing dark eyes searching mine. "I will be." And so for the next 4 hours, I lounged around that crazy presidential suite, getting pampered like a princess. I had a much-needed massage, and then I had my nails, my hair, and my makeup all done for me. So by the time everything was finished, I didn't even recognize myself in the mirror. This isn't Bonnie DeHaro. I gazed at my slender frame, looking flawless in my Gucci dress, embellished with those big boss earrings. My hair was immaculately styled, big on top with a luscious-looking wave in it, scooped to one side over my shoulder. I was certainly ready, and a far cry from the jeans and flannels I was wearing 48 hours ago. Chapter 89. Leva and her group of snazzy stylists eventually left, and I was finally left on my own. I sat in the lounge area, glancing at the strange shadows being cast over the bund, waiting for Marcos to get back from signing the contract. He said he wasn't nervous, but I was nervous for him. I wanted everything to go smoothly for him. A half an hour later, I heard the door close. I listened to Marcos's footsteps as I lay my gorgeous self along the sofa, sitting with my legs stretched out in front of me, allowing for the slit of the dress to open up and dangle onto the floor, provocatively revealing my slender tanned legs in Prada stilettos. He finally entered the lounge area and immediately stopped in his stride. I casually glanced up at him. The look on his face was priceless. "Fuck," he whispered, obsessively fixated on me. "You like it?" I innocently asked him. Without answering me, he came and knelt down beside me, running his warm hand from the base of my ankle all the way up along the top of my thigh. I knew he absolutely loved it. "Let me see you," he murmured, pulling me to my feet. I stood in front of him and let him observe. I gazed at his transfixed face, and I knew all he wanted to do was to tear it off me. He was beset with fascination. Just look at you," he quietly moaned, pressing himself into me, putting his hands behind my ears, desperate to kiss my wine-stained lips. But instead, he ran his tongue over my mouth, careful to avoid the lipstick. I stuck out my tongue and let him suck it. That just made him worse. "You are beyond beautiful," he muttered through a clenched jaw, pulling my hair away from my neck, beginning to suck on it behind my ear. He wanted me right then and there. "I've missed you all day." "Oh, thank you, puppy," I whispered, feeling his hot breath against my skin. "I've missed you too. Is the contract signed?" "All signed, my lady." I pulled his body close to mine and embraced him tightly. He smelled so good. Congratulations," I murmured, hugging him tenderly. "I am so proud of you." "Thank you," he grinned, holding my jaw in between his hands. "Come, baby, help me get changed. We need to leave in a few minutes. Son's driver is waiting downstairs." Chapter 90. I watched Marcos, cool and collected, sitting within that frenzied press conference with a ton of people coming at him like vultures from all directions. It must have been horrendous for him. Cameras shoved in his face, reporters and journalists vying for anything they could get on him. And he seldom granted interviews of any sort, which made him even more sought after. But he took it all in his stride, courteously sitting alongside Arthur Lim, Fuzan, and Vladislav Solokov, not to mention the other various Chinese and Russian officials on either side of them. After it was finally all over, much to everyone's relief, we were deftly escorted by a fleet of Mercedes that took us to a most incredible contemporary penthouse basking within the best views of the Shanghai skyline I had seen thus far. It was a circular type of penthouse offering 360-degree views as far as the eye could see, perched on top of one of the tallest buildings in the city. We were a colorful bunch, to say the least. The Chinese party, aka Fuzan, and his assorted ministerial delegates were accompanied by the most stunning Chinese women I think I've ever seen. They too were adorned in ravishing dresses and dripping with exorbitant diamond jewels. And then there were the Russians, Vladislav Solokov and co., chaperoning their women, just as enchanting and as breathtakingly gorgeous. A rude contrast to the likes of Oksana Engelby back in Santa Barbara. I was finally at peace and my faith thankfully restored, for I now knew that not all Russian women dressed and looked like Oksana. These ladies were proper class, something Oksana should make a lifelong goal to strive towards. As we entered the palatial pad, we were greeted by the bowing of several Chinese chefs to our right and about 20 butlers to our left. We were then immediately shown to our seats along a precious-looking dinner table by some extremely beautiful Chinese waitresses. Everything, and I mean everything, was obscenely decadent, and no expense had been spared. The finest champagne and liquor began flowing as soon as we were seated, and we were even treated to some of the best rice wine produced in the country. I exchanged a bemused glance with Marcos, feeling like a bit of a prat as the butler stood behind each of us for hours on end, swiftly coming to our side at even the hint of anyone raising their arm or twitching their head. It was actually quite funny, really. I mean, we lived a pretty decadent life back in California, but Marcos didn't like butlers. He liked his own space. He liked using his own arms and legs, and I agreed with him on this. I couldn't imagine someone waiting on me all day. And then came the food. The food that was served to us was indeed something else, and it really was something else, because half of the time I had no idea what I was eating. As long as it wasn't moving and it didn't resemble a dog or a cat, I was okay. And besides, by the time the 5th course came around, I could barely hold my chopsticks or eat another mouthful anyway. These Chinese were the quintessential pleasers. As the night rolled on, and with the aid of endless flowing alcohol, the ambience around the dinner table became much more intimate and relaxed amongst the guests. If only we were served a 10-course meal like this on our new train, Solokov slurred in his thick Russian accent. The dinner would take longer than the train journey itself. It must have been almost midnight by the time the serving of the food had finally finished. And to be honest, I wasn't sure if I could get up from the table. I was much more tipsy than I would have liked, and so was Marcos for that matter. I actually think he met his match with that rice wine. It was ridiculously smooth to drink. Too smooth. Through my tipsiness, I could tell right away that Marcos wanted to leave. I knew that he had had enough, and I knew this because his thoughts had drifted under the dinner table. I could feel his sneaky hand finding its way through the slit of my dress and stealthily running up in between my inner thighs. God damn it, Marcos. He was hot. And whether it was due to the rice wine or otherwise, there was no mistaking that his temperature was rising in more ways than one. I knew I was in for it once we arrived back at the hotel. Chapter 91. After arriving back to the hotel just before 1 a.m., Marcus quickly shut the door of our suite and could barely even walk me into the lounge area. He was absolutely eclipsed with heat, raging, wanton heat, That rice wine had turned him into a beast. I mean, he was a hell sexy beast anyway. But this was a beast within a beast. I'm sure it had been building ever since he first glimpsed me in my dress earlier that evening. Within his frenzied passion, he dropped to his knees and pressed his face into my warm sex, his tongue running up against my black satin panties. He was driving me insane. And if anything, the rice wine had brought the animal out in both of us. I was desperate for him to ruin me again. Gasping, I ran my red nails through his silky dark hair, encouraging his wet tongue to press into the satin fabric deeper, feeling my insides rage within me. He eventually leaned me back on my elbows on the long sofa, and within dark eyes, sharper than a needle, gazed at me, slowly parting my slender thighs. He pulled my satin panties to the side, and I quickly felt that soft, juicy flesh lick hungrily in between the crevices of my dripping lips, swollen with desperate agony. I was so hot that I could feel myself burning down in flames. I frantically slid out of my dress, while Marcus hurriedly pulled off my panties, swiftly turning me over and putting me on all fours. I immediately felt his eager face squash urgently in between my butt cheeks, going to work with that insatiable tongue of his, savoring the depth of my wanton desire for him. Puppy loves his lady's pussy, he murmured, slathering his face within my dripping pink lips. So tight, so delicious. Does my lady love puppy's tongue? I love puppy's tongue, I moaned, arching my back, gripping onto the sofa, feeling my knees tremble irrepressibly as he probed my warm sex deeper and deeper. I was dying for him to tear me apart, and thankfully, he couldn't hold out any longer. He hastily unbuttoned himself, throwing his clothes carelessly across the floor, landing over the grand piano. Then, after hours of waiting, he finally thrust that bulging rod of animal into my tight, wet walls, grabbing my hair and yanking my spinning head back, pounding me through my drunkenness, through his drunkenness, until eventually I screamed the sweet down, all the while putting on a dazzling late-night sex show for the entire Shanghai skyline. Chapter 92. Surprisingly, after a solid couple of hours of romping sex, Marcus and I had sexed ourselves up so much that we had become somewhat sober. I was relieved when my head finally stopped spinning. As we lay in bed through those early morning hours, talking and tenderly stroking each other, I randomly turned my iPhone on and checked my messages. I hadn't turned it on since turning it off before leaving Monterey. And as it turns out, I had 8 messages and about 20 texts from April, the psycho bitch. She really had nothing else to do with her time in Hawaii. Oh no, I mumbled. What? Marcos muttered through the dark. I've got 8 messages from April, I said, glaring at the bright screen. I was reluctant to listen to them. When did you last talk to her? This morning, Marcus said. Go on, listen to her message. What was her deal? I was off duty. I apprehensively put my message bank on speakerphone and listened to her hideous voice coming through. I didn't want any of her energy in our space. And with each message she left, the more irritated she sounded. I found it hard to conceal my amusement the more I listened to her. We lay there in the dark, listening to her ridiculousness. Bonnie, it's April. Again. I don't know why you're not answering your phone, but I've been trying to call and call you. I need you to do some things. Where are you? It's strange, but your phone seems to be diverted to international dial tone. Please call me ASAP. Thank you. April was pissed. She had a real angry tone in that last message. Marcus and I giggled. Go on, puppy, I said, nudging Marcos. You call her. I don't want to have to explain myself. What am I going to tell her? Tell her anything. Marcos snickered. I made a pretend phone with my hand. Oh, hey, April, I said, mimicking a mocking voice. Yeah, it's Bonnie. Oh, just in Shanghai shagging your husband. Oh, sure. Everything's fine. Marcos sighed, shaking his head scornfully at me, and grabbed his iPhone. He quickly dialed her number and put it on speakerphone. He was going to handle this. About time. The phone rang twice. Hey, honey, April said, both of us hearing the lapping waves of an ocean. How's China? It's fine. What are you doing? Oh, Henry and I are down the beach for breakfast. Uh-huh. Short silence. When are you going to be back home? She asked. Probably Wednesday, Marcus answered quickly. Depends on things here. Have you heard from Bonnie by any chance? April asked. Marcus glanced at me. No. He lied with a mischievous smile. Why would I hear from Bonnie? Well, I haven't been able to locate her, she said irately. I've been calling and calling and calling her damn phone. Give her a break, April, Marcus said firmly. Honey, she's my assistant. It's her job, okay? She snapped. She needs to do some things and have them ready for me before I get back. Would you just listen to this bitch? My skin crawled with resentment as I watched Marcus's face hardening. Uh-oh. And just exactly who's paying for her here? He muttered with a don't fuck with me tone. Oh, April went silent. She was pissed. Like I said, Marcus continued, give her a break. She's off duty. Now relax. Go and enjoy yourself and try. And let her do the same also. More silence. Henry says hi, April finally muttered. Tell him Papi says hi and we'll see him soon. Okay, she sighed nonchalantly. Well, take care over there and see you soon. Goodbye, April. The phone went silent. Oh, what a bitch. Marcus threw his cell phone across the end of the bed and rolled back on top of me. Now that's exactly why I didn't want to call her, I muttered, running my hands along his muscular arms. She's toxic. Shh, Marcus said, pulling me close to him, nuzzling his soft face into my neck. It's just us now. Chapter 93. Early the next morning, I drearily woke up to Marcus on the phone, yet again, but this time, he was speaking in that delicious Spanish accent. Anytime I heard it, I melted like butter. And actually, hearing his voice was the exact medicine I needed. Yes, I'd hate to admit it, but even though I went to bed sober, I woke up feeling like shit. Both of us barely had enough sleep, and yet Marcus walked around the suite with a bounce in his stride. I didn't understand it. Was this guy's stomach made of iron or what? Whatever the case, Marcus certainly didn't suffer from Chinese hangovers, and if he did, he certainly didn't show it. Que Dios te bendiga, mama. Bueno. Adios, mama. Adios. He closed the phone looking happy and serene. That was Mama. He smiled, throwing himself over me on the bed. She just wanted to congratulate me. And how's Mama today? I asked, as he popped his head up against his hand on the pillow, putting his other arm over my stomach. She's fine, he said, and actually, I told her about us. I glared at him. My concern was obvious. And? Of course, she doesn't approve, Marcus laughed. But she's thrilled that I'm happy. She's curious about you now. I laughed nervously. Should I be worried? I said, wiping my face. Marcus grabbed his iPhone between our legs and flipped through his photos, eventually showing me a picture of a very elegant, poised and slender woman with dark hair parted in the middle, pulled behind her head. A very handsome-looking man with a mustache stood behind her, whom also had those dark, endless eyes. Yes, had to be Marcus's father. Wow, she's so beautiful, I muttered, smiling. So eloquent. Mama also looks like she doesn't take any BS. She is, Marcus said, glancing at the picture fondly. Why don't you have any pictures of her and your family in the house? Because Ebro doesn't like it. I glared at him. What is she? I frowned disgustedly. Amish? Marcus laughed. I don't know what she is. So when's Mama gonna come and visit us back home? I'd love to meet her one day, I said, laying back in his arms. I slowly watched Marcus's face change. Oh no, I knew that face. Face of spontaneity. Marcus is making plans. What? I asked curiously. So, let's go to Colombia then, he muttered with a sly smile. For a week or so. Are you for real? I stammered. He squeezed me tight. I'm for real, Bonnet de Haro, he said, imitating me. We'll leave later this morning. Spend some time with Mama, my sisters. See the family in Santa Marta. I relax when I'm home, he said, gazing into my flummoxed green eyes. I need it. I believed it. So, we're just gonna jump on the jet and go to Colombia? Yeah, Marcus grinned. Because you can just do that when you're a billionaire, Bonnie. Oh my God, I cried, plastering my face in his hands. I was always up for some spontaneity every now and then. But Marcus was the undisputed king of it. This was nuts. As promised, we were back in the air at 35,000 feet in a matter of hours. China to Colombia. Not exactly a stroll in the park. This time around, however, the jet was much more peaceful and quiet on board. But needless to say, Marcus was still busy. The man never stopped. He was a machine. After the long 12-hour leg back across the North Pacific Ocean, we made a stop in LA for fuel, along with dropping off Arthur Lim and the lawyers. The rest of them decided to come with us. Hey, why not? I watched Marcus at the dining table in deep business talks with Lucas and Philippe, their documents scattered around them everywhere. I was tired and seedy and decided to go and lay down for a while. I gave Marcus a little smile as I walked by him, and he quickly grabbed my hand. Come here, he said, pulling me back. He pulled my arm down for me to meet his lips and kissed me. I guess he didn't care about anyone or anyone else's opinion of us anymore. Especially not Lucas or Philippe's. They didn't take notice of us two anyway. I'm going to go have a little sleep, I murmured quietly. He glanced up at me, no more than 2 inches away from my face. Okay, he nodded, finally letting me go. Several hours later, I woke up to that gentle hand stroking my body, just like before. I opened my eyes, greeted by the most beautiful thing on earth. I smiled. "Hello," he said, squeezing my hand. "Hi," I yawned. "Where are we?" "Somewhere over Panama." "Panama?" "Already?" I said, peeling my eyes open, glancing out at the streaking red across the skies through the windows. Marcus pulled my body closer to his, gazing at me suggestively. "Are you a member of the Mile High Club?" he asked quietly, pulling the mounds of black hair from my face. "No," I laughed, glancing at his face, watching those dark, lascivious eyes begin to glaze over with lust. "Well, you're about to be," he muttered, rubbing his bulging manhood against my thigh. Now, this is what I need. I knew this was what would make me feel $1 million. And so as the jet streaked toward the melting orange sun, Marcus slipped out of his clothes and helped me out of mine, and slowly began to inaugurate me into this exclusive Mile High Club, sealing my premium membership for life.